26 years since the birth of the late civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And this year, the official holiday happens to fall on Inauguration Day, Monday. Dr. Earle Fisher is the senior pastor of Abyssinian Missionary Baptist Church. And Dr. Fisher, glad to have you here. Good to see you. Happy New Year to you. Happy
New Year to you, my brother. Good to be back with you.
Good to be back with you as well. I was reading recently, you said when it comes to Dr. King's legacy, it requires more of Memphis. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think it requires more of all of us, especially Memphis, because of what he meant to the city and what the city means to the broader movement for black freedom, for civil rights, for black liberation. I think when we start talking about what it means to honor his legacy, it has to be more than lip service. It has to be more than some superficial spectacle. And as much as I can appreciate like service-oriented initiatives, we need structural change. This is what he came and fought for, and that's what he ultimately died for.
You also talk about many, commemorate his death, but you say we should celebrate his life. What do you also mean by that?
Yeah, there's a statement that says we honor prophets because they are safe when they're dead. And so there were people who wouldn't stand with King when he was alive, but definitely try to lift up his name. Now there are people who are in positions of leadership and authority. I mean, think about what's going to happen in 5 days on January the 20th. You're going to have people on King Day talking about King's legacy, but you're also going to have a president get inaugurated who does not share King's nature by any stretch of their imagination. So our challenge is to make sure we're pushing people to do more regarding the nature of King and not just the name of King.
So when you push in that direction, especially the push for justice, how do we go about that?
Well, one of it is to make sure we're up to speed on the issues and up to speed on history. I think a lot of times we assess what is happening in the moment and neglect how we got to the point to where we're at, and then sometimes we misassess what progress actually is. And then another thing is to make sure that we're holding people accountable, especially people who have been elected to office, to implement policies that would achieve the types of things that King fought and died for.
Let's also talk about justice. Let's also talk 2 years later, after the brutal beating death of Tyree Nichols. You seem to be also saying, and what I was reading about, there seems to be a lot of more lip service than really action in this city. Why do you say that?
So, of course, I think broadly speaking, there is a lot more lip service than it is action. If we're talking more specifically about what's happening with Tyree and what I wrote about regarding the mayor's administration, I think they are acting, and I can give some kudos to their attempts at action. But we have to be pushing for the highest level of accountability and transparency. And I think some of the maneuvers that the city administration and the mayor's office have went into insofar as like the consent decree and the Department of Justice report and things of that nature, I just don't think we are operating at the highest levels of accountability and transparency. And so we have to continue to push in that regard.
When it comes to that scathing report by the Department of Justice, how did you view that? And were they, sadly but true, really on top of things with what they said and their assessment?
Yeah, I think most people would say they confirmed what you've heard people saying on the ground for the past several decades, which is why many of us were asking for them to come to town and do this report, because we knew we needed that level of federal administrative validation. And so it's clear that what was in there is not something that fell out of the sky or something that they made up or contrived. It's legitimate documentation of what has been happening, and there are recommendations on what we need to do moving forward.
So with those recommendations, Dr. Fisher, when it especially comes to police reform, what direction do we need to look into, and what would you like to see out there?
Well, we've been saying for the last several years that there are some things that need to happen, primarily with regards to investment in social services and issues related to poverty and economic development in some of these neighborhoods that are suffering from disinvestment, where we have saturated these neighborhoods with police officers because, generally speaking, we think that the answer to crime and violence is locking people up. But the answer historically, and in places like Baltimore, for instance, that's seen substantial decreases in crime, it has been investments in these particular neighborhoods. But the Department of Justice report also talked about the mental health aspect of this and that. We send in police officers out to places where we need to be sending mental health professionals. And so there are ways for us to engage in different approaches to fighting crime and different ways to engage in what's what's happening in our community, and I think this report recommends those things.
Have you had some of those conversations with some of these key members of our community as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've talked to community members. I've been in conversation with Mayor Young and his administration, and so we're trying to push as hard as we can to make sure that we get as much accountability and transparency and progressive reform as possible. But it's a long obedience in the same direction, so we got to stay at it.
Dr. Earle Fisher, always good to see you.
My pleasure.